want to say at the start, Faisal wrote the part, but I just put my signature on it. Really. I just got to look at it and make sure nothing clashed with what I believe. But thank you very much for that. Let me start by saying that I have long been a tremendous admirer of Herb and Sue Hammond. Most of you have no idea what they went through. I'm sure there were many threats against you during the time. He's a registered professional forester. I couldn't believe you would wade into a meeting and stand up for your position. I mean, those bastards threatened me all the time, but you were one of them. Anyway, I think tonight, for me, this is an acknowledgement of the fight that you've waged all these years, and I thank you for the courage to hang in there all those years. This is a moment. You've heard the reasons, all of the compelling reasons why we have to return nature to the city. I don't like, by the way, saying such and such is free. It's free, like we're saying it's free. We've treated it as if it's free. That's what forests and nature do, you know, and we happen to treat it as if it's free. We keep imposing our values. I really hate, we're now saying, oh, you got to protect forests, they're a great carbon sink, and the wetlands are a carbon sink. They're just doing what they've always done. And we're now seeing, or promulgating the reason we're protecting these now, because they're serving this job of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. I didn't prepare a talk. Usually I like to write out my talk. You guys said it all as far as I'm concerned about the book. But I think the underlying crisis that we face, whether it's species extinction or climate change, these are all, or poverty or inequities, these are all interlinked and connected. And I think underlying the whole problem is this. I went to a small village on the side of an Andes mountain in Peru with Wade Davis many years ago. And there I learned through Wade that the children are taught from childhood on that the mountain their village is on is an Apu. Apu means God. And as long as that Apu casts its shadow on the village, it will determine the fate of those children. And Wade said, can you imagine how those kids, when they grow up, treat that mountain compared to kids in Trail, British Columbia, who are taught all their lives? Those mountains are full of gold, silver, and copper. The way we see the world shapes the way we behave and treat that world. Is a forest a community of organisms, or is it timber and pulp? Is a river the circulatory system of the land, or just an opportunity for energy and transportation and irrigation? Is another species a resource, or is it our biological kin? You know, is soil dirt or alive? Is is the planet just an opportunity for us, or truly our mother? The way we see the world shapes our behavior. To me, the crisis we face now is not just the crisis of very little time to make change, but a crisis of the way that we look out and have constructed the systems to guide, shape, and constrain us. Those systems, legal, economic, and political, they left nature out, or they treat nature as a sidekick. And so it's the systems themselves, you know. And I think I've been fighting against the Alberta tar sands now for over 15 years. But all the time we've been fighting, we say, look, this isn't going to be a big hit on the economy. There are huge jobs over in renewables, and we'll transition the workers from the tars. We always couch everything we say to protect the system that is driving us on a destructive path. And I think this is a very sudden change for For 95% of human history, we were nomadic hunter-gatherers. And when you live in a state of having to find your food and shelter and all of that every day, carrying everything you own on your back, you know that you are deeply embedded in nature and utterly dependent on nature. And even after we became farmers 10,000 years ago, farmers know very well that the amount of snow in the winter is related to how much moisture you're going to have in the soil in the summer. They understand that there are plants that will take nitrogen from the air and fix it as fertilizer in the soil. They understand a great deal of our dependence on the natural world. But I think that for most of human existence then, we knew that we lived in a web of relationships. Relationships with all of the other plants and animals on the planet, but with air, water, soil, and sunlight. That was our understanding. And when you are one strand in a web of relationships, when you receive the benefits from that web, you have a reciprocal obligation to act properly to keep it all going. And that reciprocity is what is missing today in all of the various ways that we regulate ourselves. So I believe I put a lot of the blame on the Renaissance. You know, you get the elevation then. The brain was a huge part of our survival and well-being over evolutionary time. I mean, if you think we evolved in Africa 150,000 years ago, we weren't a very impressive animal. I mean, there were many of us who were big, fast, strong. Look how many of us are wearing glasses. I mean, I would never have lasted there. But our key, of course, was the brain. Anyway, I have a whole thing about the brain and foresight. But in the Renaissance, René Descartes said, "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. So the brain was what made our existence. And of course, Francis Bacon said, "Scientia potestas est," knowledge, scientia, science, is power. And Newton began this idea that the universe is like an immense clockwork mechanism. And we can actually study the parts. And eventually, when we know enough about the parts, we can put everything back together again and explain the whole. It's reductionism, which we now know simply doesn't work. But, and I only used René Descartes and Francis Bacon to show you that I studied Latin for 4 years. It's the only time I can ever get to use it. But, so I believe that the Renaissance then began this elevation of the mind as the most important part of our bodies and who we are. And so we have this notion that we are no longer a part of the web. We are the top of a pyramid. We're the top. Everything is about us. Everything down there is for us to use. And what we as environmentalists do is say, yeah, well, we've got to be more careful. And we try to protect the very systems that are themselves destroying the things that keep us alive. We are nature. There is no separation. We take air into our bodies that have come from around the planet, and when we breathe out, half of the air is still in our bodies. You can't draw a line that says air ends here, and I begin there. There, we are air. And whatever we do to the air, we do directly to ourselves. It's as simple as that. But we don't see that connection. When I started as an environmentalist, when many millions of people did, when Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, I mean, I thought of the environment out there, and we were here. And, you know, in 1962, when Silent Spring came out, there wasn't a single Department of the Environment in any government on the planet. So she put the environment on the agenda, and people like me were running around saying, we need laws to regulate how much and what we take from the environment and how much and what we put back into it, and enforce those regulations. But it became very clear very quickly, we don't know enough to be able to do that. When pesticides began to be used, we gave a Nobel Prize to Paul Mueller in 1948 showing DDT kills arthropods, including insects. We didn't know there was a phenomenon called biomagnification. That only happened when eagles began to disappear and scientists tracked it down. How can we regulate these very powerful technologies when we don't know enough to anticipate what the consequences will be? When the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, we didn't know there was a thing called radioactive fallout. So over and over again, we're very clever, but we don't know enough to be able to anticipate consequences of what we do. So the legal systems constrain us. You know, we know damn well, goddamn, some activists ought to go up. It really pisses me off that Alaska has this little strip of our coastline of BC in the panhandle there. Well, someone's got to go and clip it off. But anyway, our salmon are born in British Columbia. They go through the panhandle. Now they suddenly become American fish. But then they go along the coasts of Russia and Japan. Who's fishing? We try to manage these things through our borders. Danielle Smith says whatever she does to the tar sands is none of our goddamn business. It's Alberta business. Well, that would be okay if air stayed within the Alberta border, and she wants to do all of that stuff that they're going to do with the tar sands. Air doesn't stay within national boundaries, nor does water. And we are nature, we are a part of the hydrologic cycle, right? We leak water up, we're inflated by water, 70% of us is water, but we lose it and we are a part. We take the water from the hydrologic cycle and put it back in. Every bit of the food that we go to eating, to maintaining our bodies was once alive. We depend on the rest of the web of life for our lives. And whatever we then do with our plants and animals, we're doing directly to ourselves as we consume it. And it's the same with every bit of the energy in our bodies that we need to move and grow and reproduce is sunlight, captured by plants in photosynthesis and converted into energetic molecules that we then consume and use. Why am I looking at this? This is not my notes. So our legal system, it seems to me, you know, we're now boasting that Canada has recognized the rights of a river, the Magpie River in Quebec. Who the hell do we think we are? We're going to assign rights to everything. What about the rights of a lake just to exist, or a forest to exist as a community of organisms, or any species? What about that? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going on. Wait. I just wanted to tell this incredible story of my 6-year-old granddaughter. Her mother is a marine biologist. So, and her mother's friend, who's a professor at the University of Miami, came up to our cabin on Quadra last summer with her 6-year-old daughter, who got bit like mad by mosquitoes that night. So the mother, this professor from Miami, the next morning was saying, "Oh God, if we could only get rid of mosquitoes." And Nakina, my 6-year-old granddaughter, said, "But the bats and the fish and the frogs, they eat the mosquitoes." And Jen said, "Well, yeah, you're right, but if we could just get rid of the mosquitoes, that's all." And Nakina said, "I wouldn't want to live in a world without mosquitoes." That's what we need, it seems to me, to understand. This is a funny story. She's an amazing kid. She loves to climb trees. Called my wife, said, Nana, come over. And she goes over and said, "Don't step in that puddle of pee." And Tarla said, "Where did the pee come from?" And she said, "My urethra." That's a smart kid. Anyway, our legal system doesn't make any ecological sense. Our economic system, of course, is based on the creative cancer. It's already, the global economy is way too big, but growth has become the driving force behind what corporations and a lot of people do. Last night, I had a conversation in public with Mark Carney, and this is an issue that really economists have to deal with. Are there limits to economic growth? And what do we do? What kind of an economy do we have? I believe that we have to be into degrowth. It's already too big. And the challenge is greater equity of that wealth. I mean, anyway, that's another rant. And so the economic system, it seems to me, in Mark Carney's book, Values, he points out that Jeff Bezos' company, the Amazon, is valued by the economy in over $100 billion, while the Amazon rainforest, the greatest terrestrial ecosystem on the planet, has no economic value until it's logged, mined, dammed, or grows soybeans or cattle or cities. Now, if that isn't a screwed up system, but we're all running around trying to keep that system going. You know, Danielle Smith could shut down the fossil fuel industry, but we'll help her get, no. We can't go on defending the system. And finally, of course, our political system, let me just say that, the big contribution Indigenous people give, in addition to the reciprocity, where we receive from nature, but we have a reciprocal obligation to act in a good way. But Indigenous people also speak of 7 generations. 7 generations of memory of our ancestors, in the world that we live, and 7 generations ahead. Whatever we do today has consequences. How long do you think, or how far ahead do you think a politician thinks? Of course, it has to be before the next election. And so anything that they do, look at the political promises that politicians have made from way back. They are all geared towards the next election. And and so I think that we owe a great deal to the perspective of Indigenous people, which is much further than anything political. And of course, the economic perspective goes from the quarterly report to the next quarterly report. So I just want you to consider this new way of seeing our relationship with nature. The challenge, I believe now, is to protect every bit of wild nature that continues to exist. And then we have to allow nature back into the habitats that we've taken on. The COP15 meeting in Montreal 2 years ago boasted 30 by 30. This is the great achievement of that 15th meeting on biodiversity. Protect 30% of the land by 2030. What kind of a cockamamie idea is that? We're one species out of 10 to 30 million species, and we think protecting 30% of the land for all of the other animals and plants, and we're going to take over 70% of it? It's just madness. So I hope every one of you buys the book and goes out and let's get this going. Thank you.